Here you can see some distortion on the leatherette. It almost looks like a fingerprint, and one over here too. Now, how can you get something on the leatherette that looks like a fingerprint? Well, it's either is a fingerprint and it's been caused by the leatherettes haven't been put back on with a adhesive that's got a solvent which disagrees with the leatherette and so softened the leatherette, or it means that someone has had solvent on their hands and they have pressed on that plastic and it's in a softened state, it's taken a mark. So there's a definite pattern here and here which look reminiscent of a fingerprint, and in the alternative they are some sort of bunching up of the surface of the leatherette. I think they're fingerprints. Right, to get in from here we've got to remove this leatherette patch from the shutter release button. That came off very easily. They don't normally come off quite so easily, but they're not usually a problem. Normally you've got to get underneath them with the scalpel and just work them off. One screw holds that in the middle. That screw was not tight, not even vaguely tight. We'll take that screw off. Now this release button, I don't normally put that through the cleaner. Do that manually. We want these leatherettes off here. So just make a little bit of space here on the bench. Normally I start here at the base, and this leatherette is coming up pretty easily. Often there's a change in how the adhesive holds these in place between the front piece, which only extends out to here, or the aluminium body of the casting, which starts about here. So you may find that the leatherettes start to come off nice and easily like this, and then suddenly get difficult. Now here I'm sliding the scalpel underneath these things, and the scalpel is acting as much as a lever or a wedge as anything else. It's not being used to cut anything. Okay. Now it's important to get your leatherettes off in one piece, because there are no new 60-year-old leatherettes that you're going to buy from the spare parts place. You can get aftermarket leatherettes which are various nice wood leather grain patterns, but they won't be the same. If you're stuck using replacement leatherettes, aftermarket leatherettes, you'll be replacing the entire set, not just one piece. Ideally we want the camera to remain fairly original, so we want the leatherettes off in one piece. Now the leatherettes are almost certainly going to be stuck firmer along this edge here, along the corner, than anywhere else. Where the leatherettes are stretched over a corner, they tend to be very firmly stuck. I suppose it's like having the a piece of wood and clamps while you're gluing it. At that point it's being held very firmly, and the glue tends to hold it very firmly afterwards. I'm just sliding this scalpel underneath here, and that leatherette's just popped off. Okay. I'm looking at the state of the adhesive. I don't know whether that's all original adhesive or whether that's been glued back previously. Put that to one side. Anyway, that popped off with remarkable ease. Now I'm going to do the other side, and it's the same business. By having the chrome trims off top and bottom, it means I can slide the scalpel in here easily. The Leatherettes, these ones feel quite stiff. They're probably a little bit brittle. And that means that if you are too rough getting them off, if you pull them up too hard, you might break them. Now that's not the end of the world. I've put some pretty fractured Leatherettes back on cameras, and once you're done, you can hardly tell. But it's not an ideal situation. Ideally you want them all off in one piece, because it's very hard to align pieces of leatherette correctly if you've got them in pieces. You end up with cracks between the pieces, which you can fill with various methods, typically wax. Okay, so that's off. Again, I'm still not sure whether that's original adhesive or whether that's been put there at a later date. I'm inclined to think it's been a part before. So we've got all the leatherettes off that we need off this camera. You do not need to attack this patch or that patch. If you find a camera where those patches have been lifted off the camera, it's usually a sign that someone who didn't know what they were doing has been playing, and you want to avoid those ones if you possibly can. These leatherettes came off easy this time round, but that's not normally the case. Usually it's a bit more of a struggle than that. So I'll cut in some footage showing you the removal process for a camera that's got its leatherettes stuck in the normal fashion, which is to say troublesome. Now, naphtha works quite well for this, and typically it doesn't damage these leatherettes. I say typically because it depends on what the naphtha you've got actually is and what state the leatherettes are in. And that's certainly coming away quite well. Just put a few drops under there. Don't be in a mad rush to get the leatherettes off. Don't just grab them and try and rip them loose, because that way lies madness and death. And this is not one of the world's prettiest pieces of leatherette, but by the time it's cleaned up and put back, it'll look fine. Whoever put these leatherettes in place was very, very generous with the adhesive. And they may have really slopped it on. Okay, there's our leatherette off in one piece, unharmed. So the chrome trim from the base of the camera. you can possibly see a smear of adhesive on the chrome trim there and here. That's not run there from me using the solvent at the moment. That's adhesive that was spread onto the metalwork whenever this leatherette had been put back in the past, and whoever had done it just wasn't tidy about cleaning up. Lift the plate off carefully. Now there should be a spring in here. And it's not there. So that means that the capping plate would not work correctly because its return spring is missing. Now that has obviously been missing ever since whoever put this base plate back on the camera did so. So that's interesting. It means that the capping plate wouldn't have worked correctly. Alright, I'm going to remove the frame counter next. I'm going to unhook its spring, which immediately shot onto the table, and lift out the frame counter attachment. This is the lock that locks the film advance at the end of the film. That has its return spring, a little wee fine one. And this piece here, this of course isn't going to be moving at the moment. This piece here is what actually lets the lock drop in. As the counter reaches number 1, this shifts inwards and that allows the lock to drop down, and it locks into the film advance shaft at this point. Alright, so that's enough off the base for the moment. Let's turn our attention to the front of the camera. Now you'll see that the leatherette patch is missing from this corner. Now that's a sign that whoever was doing the repair previously didn't know what they were about. There's not much reason to remove those usually. I'm going to take the single screw out of the shutter release button here. The shutter release button here is missing its little leatherette patch, which would normally have to be taken off. Now I'm going to remove the leatherettes from the front of the camera. Now depending on how well they're stuck, these will peel back very easily. These appear to be stuck quite well. So I was certainly able to get my scalpel under the edge of that. I'm going to pour a little bit of naphtha onto my scalpel blade, which will make it easier to get it underneath that adhesive. This will be stuck down with the same sort of adhesive that's been used on the base of the camera most likely. Of course, it's always possible that this camera has had multiple repairs from multiple people and that there's different adhesive on here. Don't go mad running naphtha onto things either. It'll end up running places you don't want it to run. The leatherettes here are a little bit stiff. They vary a lot. Often on the Reflex 3 the leatherettes are quite flexible, and it'll just be a reflection of the materials that they were using at the time, whatever particular plastic it was that formed the leatherette. This is very well stuck around here. Unusually so. Just looking for a different pair of tweezers. Ones that aren't as sharp as the ones I'm currently using. Okay, I'll keep working away at this. Yeah, that adhesive is unusually tenacious. Of course, there may be multiple lots of adhesive here, and whatever's been used is not... I'm getting crumbly stuff out from under there, so there's something that goes hard has been used. So what I'm striking is going to depend a lot on how well the metal was cleaned prior to the last time someone glued stuff back. If it had just been this sort of adhesive as I struck on the base plate, this would be coming off much easier. The naphtha would be softening it, and the adhesive would be letting go. But it's I think something else has been used in here. Sometimes you'll find these cameras where the leatherette's only been peeled back as far as here to allow the person to lift the front plate off. Don't do that. You always end up with a huge crease across the leatherette where it was folded back. Always make a point of getting the leatherette off complete. I'm going to see if I can peek under there and see what I think's been used. I can't tell. It's something that's gone hard and dry looking. Normally the leatherette just peels off quite easily on these cameras. So I am having to force my scalpel down hard against the aluminium body to keep it underneath the leatherette so it doesn't slip and cut through the leatherette as I try and cut through this glue layer. It might be very hard to get the leatherette off at that corner. Yeah, it's certainly come off quite in flakes there, so it's something different in the way of adhesive. Be careful lifting the leatherette up over that release. Okay, that just suddenly moved quite easily there. Now the leatherette here has got some cracks in it. It may well be that the previous repairer didn't peel the leatherette right all the way back. They might have only gone to the corner. I'm working in from the hinge end now, and I'm just levering this leatherette up here. That's free. So it's quite brittle. I don't quite know what to make of that. Now I have to deal with the one on the other side. Well, this is much, you can hear that crackling as because it's quite brittle as it cracks away. Let's see if we can get in from the catch end. No, it's pretty well stuck. I think I'll have to remove the chrome trim from the top so I can get at that underneath that edge easier. Alright, so what I need to do here is just remove my strap plug here, these two screws, and this hold down on the back here. I'll remove this hold down, the strap plug, don't lose that little round spacer, it's quite important. This will allow me to get this chrome trim off the top, which will allow me to get down under this edge of the leatherette here. The leatherette certainly looked funny there. I don't know whether it's what I suspect is that there's some coating on the top of that leatherette which is cracking. I'll find out when I clean them up to put them back on the camera. Once I'm done. This repair is interesting because we know that someone's been in the camera in the past, and we know that it's been repaired before. Somebody's gone to quite a great length to repair it. But we know that things have been done wrong because it was missing the spring for the capping plate. So I know that would not have worked properly. So knowing that someone's been in here repairing this, and knowing that that probably wasn't a successful repair, we can find just about anything in here, and some of the faults will be introduced faults, if you like. They're not what the camera suffered from in the natural course of decay and old age. There'll be faults that have been introduced as someone neglects to put a part back, or puts a part back wrong, or breaks or bends something that would normally never happen by itself. And any time you strike a camera, a broken camera needing repair, you always stand a better chance of being able to repair it if you're the first one on the scene. If somebody's already had a go, you can just about guarantee that there are new problems, quite apart from whatever it was that caused the camera to be retired in the first place. And as I said before, this comes out of my box of parts cameras, and the parts cameras probably came to me as parts cameras. They may have passed through multiple hands as parts cameras. They may have had good bits robbed out of them. We know this one had a dud meter. We don't know about the state of the prism because the shutter does not function, so you couldn't see through it. But people will steal meters and prisms from parts cameras, and if they're tidy, they'll put all the bad bits together into one camera, and without any nefarious purpose.